Hi guys, my name's Richard and welcome back to the channel. It's Locknor Smithy Offgrid. So today we want to talk about a subject: do I need planning permission to erect an agricultural building? Now, it's a topic that's quite often talked about on some of these smallholding groups, quite a few smallholding and farming groups on Facebook, and the topic that's quite often asked is, do I need to get planning permission to put up an agricultural shed? Now, there's a lot of confusion over this. If you've got permitted development rights, which we'll talk about in a minute, then you might not need planning permission to erect an agricultural building. That doesn't mean you don't need to tell the planners what you're doing. We've had a bit of trouble here. We've built 3 sheds so far. We've built them without planning permission, and one of our neighbours thinks that we didn't have permission to build them. So they've repeatedly reported us to the planning department. Now, just because we didn't submit a full planning application and they weren't notified, now just for the record, they were way over there, behind that farm, the person that likes to speed dial to the planners. So even if we put a full planning application in, they wouldn't be close enough that they would need notified, because that's our land there. We own this track, we own a metre past the boundary. This land here is all unclaimed agricultural land, it's unregistered. We've checked with with land registry, and there isn't actually a registered keeper, so there's no one to notify. So basically, if you've got permitted development rights, you can use the prior approval and prior notification process. So in England, you need to own a minimum of 0.9 of a hectare, which is around 2.5 acres. So the site that you build your agricultural building on in England needs to be a minimum of about 2.5 acres. And you need to have constant control over a total of 12.5 acres. So that's 5 hectares. Now, so the other 10 acres that you need, you don't necessarily need to own. If you can't afford to, or you can't find land, you don't need to own it. You do need to control it for a long period of time, so it can't be that you're getting it on seasonal grass lets. You need to have like a proper farm business tenancy. I believe the minimum period of time at the time of applying for planning permission is you need to have another 7 years left on the lease or the contract. So, that would really mean taking on a field or a block of land on maybe a 10-year farm business tenancy, getting your business kind of started, and then needing your shed on the bit of land you do own. In England, the building can be up to 1,000 square metres. But obviously, it's got to be an appropriate size for the size of business you're running, and it's got to be appropriate scale for the land. You can't own 2.5 acres and have 1,000 square metre building. The planners are going to smell a rat. It's also got to look like an agricultural building, and it's got to be for the purposes of agriculture. So, it can't look like a house. There was one rejected local to us, this is in Scotland, recently. The shed was very tall, it was all metal clad, roller shutter doors, and it looked like a car garage, It didn't look like it was for agriculture. They don't refuse it when they don't give you permitted development. They just ask you to put in a formal planning application, and then they'll consider it, having more time to do so. Now in Scotland, permitted development changed on the 1st of April 2021. Prior to that, you could only build an agricultural building up to 465 square metres. They've now modernised and brought it in line with England. So now in Scotland you can build a building up to 1,000 square metres without planning permission, but you must go through the prior approval process. Scotland is different to England. Your holding only has to be a minimum of 0.4 of a hectare, which is 1 acre. So in Scotland they're encouraging a lot of small farmers, a lot of market gardens to establish. You don't need all that money to get 12.5 acres. You don't need to rent additional land. As long as you own more than an acre, you can put a building up. But again, you've got to be sensible. You can't go for a massive warehouse looking building. You know, you can't be a builder and you know, run a construction company or tarmacking lorries running out of it. You know, you're going to get into trouble. So, you know, if you've only got an acre, you're probably going to be able to put up a small shed, maybe something like 30 by 20, and you may be able to put up a polytunnel or something. But, you know, that's the way it is. So, your prior approval process. So the first shed we built is the one in the foreground here. It's a steel portal frame building. You know, it's got metal box profile roofing, Yorkshire boarding on the sides, and it's blockwork halfway up, and it's got a concrete floor, double doors at the front. Standard agricultural spec building. So we contacted the planning department, asked them how we go about putting in prior notification. They directed us to the Scottish Planning Portal. So you go on the Scottish Planning Portal, the forms are electronic. It's similar in England, but a different electronic system. So up here, you have to download 2 maps, a block plan. You need to outline your site on the block plan. You need to mark your site on the map, and you need to make sure that the roads, so there's a couple of close roads, so they can identify your site. You know, so in my case, the roads weren't marked. I had to write on the map in a biro, like the B743, B718, so the planners knew exactly where we were, or else they wouldn't accept your application. On the block plan, I had to draw the building, where the building was going, and then I had to draw floor plans and elevations. Now, it's up to your local planning department what they'll accept. You know, some just want like how tall the building is. In our case, because we're only a small holding, you know, we're only 8.5 acres here, they were wondering what we were doing. So basically they asked for further clarification, so I had to submit detailed plans, which I'll include at the end of this video if you want to have a look. I just drew them on graph paper. They were to scale, just drawn with a scale ruler, fairly simple. You know, I'm not an architect. You know, I went to agricultural college, so I've got a fair idea what I'm doing, but I'm not an architect. So they were drawn with a ruler with a biro, and then they wanted clarification as to what the building was. You know, so we gave them a description: blockwork walls, Yorkshire boarding, you know, steel profiled roofing. I try and avoid saying box profile because you don't necessarily know what you're gonna buy or what you're gonna get at the time, so I just put steel profile roofing in slate blue. You know, it's fairly common around here, it's what they like to accept. They ask what you're going to use the building for, so you've got to be careful. If you say you're going to house pigs or livestock, then they don't like it. You would need slurry handling facilities, you'd need a mid and a muck store, so you'd probably get knocked back. So you've got to say it's for general purpose storage of feedstuffs, machinery, tools. That's generally what I say. So, and that is what we use the buildings for. You know, we put the hay in on the feed, shavings, park the tractors, the machinery, you know, secure storage for the tools. So, you know, that's one building we've done. There's a bigger building down here that we'll just take a walk into that's been done under prior approval, and there's another building out the back that's nearly complete. So when you submit your application for prior approval, it normally takes about a week for them to accept your application. It doesn't come back straight away. I find the best way of communicating with the planning department is via email, so you've got proof that you've emailed them, and I find you sometimes have to chase them. So I normally give them about 4 days after I've submitted the application, to which I'll then email them and say, have you got my application? Send them the reference number. If I don't hear back, I'll send them the application again. They do like to play a game of cat and mouse, you know, it's part of what they do. But basically, if you've made any mistakes, you know, if the red line on your planning application's blue, or we all make mistakes, they'll send it back and they'll ask you to amend it. It's only like a teacher marking your assessment. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult. You know, anybody can do it. Anybody that's, you know, a genuine farmer that's used to filling out IX forms or whatever, subsidy forms, you'll be used to. You'll have farm maps. You'll know what you're doing. It's not difficult. The worst thing that happens is you send it in, you email it across electronically, pay your 89 quid fee, that's what it is just now, and they send it back. And it's just like a teacher marking an assessment. They tell you exactly what you've done wrong, so you just correct it, and you submit it again. And if there's anything wrong, you submit it again, and you just keep going. And eventually they accept it. Now, the day they accept your application, they've got 28 days to tell you what's going on. Now, providing you've done everything right and you're not trying to pull a scam on the planners, you're not trying to build a warehouse or something that's not appropriate for the land, you know, providing you have got a holding number, you are running an agricultural business or you're establishing one, then they'll come back to you. And normally what the response is, they'll send you a letter with all the details on. It'll say, in this instance, prior approval of the planning department is not required. That means you don't need to do a further planning application, you can just proceed. And I normally find it's best, when you get that letter, to start building straight away, so you've made a start. And it'll normally tell you, as long as it's for the purposes of agriculture, rearing animals for food, you know, birds, it normally has quite a detailed description. And it says that you've got to complete the build. Normally, in our area, it was in 3 years. I know down in England it's normally 5. Now, if they're unsure as to what you're up to, so if you've not got an agricultural business, you've maybe not got a holding number, it's maybe just a bare field, and you're trying to start a hobby farming or something, but you've not maybe given them enough information, they won't reject your application. What they'll turn around and say is that you need to put in a full planning application. So it doesn't mean that you've been rejected. There's been a few of these round here. People get disheartened. They maybe don't know how to put a full planning application in, so they don't bother. But all that it means is that the planners want you to pay the bigger fee, put exactly the forms in that you've used before, all the paperwork, and then they've got a longer period to look at your planning application, and it'll probably be the officer that considered your permitted development prior approval notification. They'll probably want to talk to their boss, discuss it. It might be that they think the building's a bit big, you know, and then there'll be a bit of toing or throwing, but the chances are, even then, you will still get your building. But you just need to plug on and go through the full planning application. But 9 times out of 10, these buildings get built just through the prior notification route. But the important thing is, just because you've got permitted development rights, a lot of people think you can just put the building up. Now, there isn't a route for retrospective prior notification. You can't do it retrospectively. If you go and stick the building up and the planners come knocking, they won't be very happy, and what they'll make you do is put a retrospective planning application in with the full fee, which is going to cost you a lot more money. And then it'll probably roll on for a year or two. They might be awkward. If you're a new business starting up, they might start asking you for business plans, you know, projected cash flows, all this sort of stuff, and that sort of stuff costs you money. So the prior approval, prior notification route is still the best route for an agricultural building. Like I say, it's only £89. Most people in Scotland, if they own a bit of land, will have permitted development rights. It's a bit more complicated in England because of this 5 hectare, 12.5 acre rule. But the thing is, if you're below 5 hectares, the chances are you're not going to be a genuine agricultural building in England, you know, a genuine agricultural business. You know, you are going to be a little hobby farm, and they are going to want to know exactly what you're doing, because they don't want buildings popping up everywhere. So that's an insight into permitted development for agricultural buildings. So we've discussed Scotland, we've discussed England. Wales is similar. I don't have a lot of knowledge on that. The planning process in Wales is different to everywhere else. You know, they have Chapter 7, you know, they have a system where they're encouraging small holdings, but I've tried to read the booklets, let's be honest, it's hundreds of pages long. It's very interesting, but there's a lot of loopholes if you live in Wales, so good luck with that. Right, so you've been watching Richard, and this is Locknor Smithy Off-Grid. If you like what you've seen, give us a like, give us a thumbs up. If you're running a small holding, if you're off-grid, whatever you're doing, just drop us a comment below. I'd be quite interested to know what it is you're doing, what your YouTube channel is. We are on Facebook under Locknor Smithy. Find us on Facebook, give us a like, you know, subscribe to our videos if you want on YouTube. My email address is in the description on our YouTube account. So if you've got any questions, if you need any help, just drop us an email. I will get back as quick as I can. And stay safe, stay well. Thank you folks, thanks for watching.